Just like that, we're live. Welcome back to Inside the Franchise. I got Abe with me. Abe, Abe,
Yes, sir. To be on to talk about some Packers.
is
Go Packers.
exactly right. We're talking about the Green Bay Packers, right? And we're gonna be talking. We're gonna be talking overall, just overall how they did in 2020, what their what their situation is right now, and then how can they address some of these needs that I have up on the big board right now. If anybody needs any introduction, I'm pretty sure you've seen Abe. Abe is one of our fantasy gurus.
So
But he's also a Packers Nation. So he definitely brings the Packers knowledge. Unfortunately, Walter couldn't join us today, but it's all good. We gotta keep on rolling. So let's get right into it, man. You guys finished 13-3. You guys took the division, finished 13-3. What can you say in a nutshell? Sum up the 2020 season.
yeah, I would say in 2020, what you really saw was the Packers kind of jump into that elite territory. I think in 2019, most of the season, we were winning a lot of games, but look at the margin in 2019, it wasn't as big. So in 2020, we were winning games by more, mostly because of the offense. The offense absolutely exploded with Aaron Rodgers having an MVP season. Devontae Adams, I don't know how you can't argue he wasn't the best receiver in the league this year. They were scoring 32 points a game. Meanwhile, everyone was saying you need more weapons. You need more weapons. So really, just jumping into that elite territory, being able to play with those elite teams. We saw in 2019 the Packers got absolutely demolished by the 49ers, so they weren't really quite in that elite class yet. They weren't ready to play the big boy football yet. But I think this year they got to the same exact spot, the NFC Championship game, and they lost. But they played much quality football. Defensively, I would say it was a slight step back just because we were less opportunistic this year, less sacks, less turnovers. However, the offense made a huge step forward, which more than outweighed the defensive setback, I would say. But I would say overall, the biggest thing is kind of just leaping into that elite category in the NFC and in the NFL. So we were pretty much a top three team most of the year, and we haven't been able to say that in quite some time because we've been close, but not quite elite like we were this year. So
Would you say that Aaron Rodgers is playing his best football still?
yeah, so I've been watching Aaron Rodgers since 2008. I would say either this year or 2011 was the best years I've ever seen. This year, just because of the other things going on, going into the pandemic offseason, a lot less time to kind of prepare. Everyone was talking about, oh, you need more than just Devontae Adams. They have a major lack of weapons, and I think offensively we proved that wasn't the case, scoring 32 points a game. So definitely a lot to prove for A-Rod. But back in 2011, he was also had an incredible season, that 122.5 passer rating. So I think either back in 2011 or this year, this is the highest I've ever seen him play. Although I will say that this year he had less weapons, so it was even a harder degree of difficulty. So probably more impressive.
And it's kind of crazy, right? Because we kind of talked about something similar to the situation. We were talking about the Buffalo Bills just previously, and we had said how Josh Allen needed a balance of some kind of balance instead of him always airing the ball out, and one of the things that was alluded to was they needed a good established running game. Right now, you guys are in cap hell, shall we say, right?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't look likely like you guys are going to bring back Aaron Jones.
hmm Yeah. So right now the Packers were about 27th in cap space, so we're not looking good. We don't have much room to spend. You look at the J.J. Watt situation. He was paid $15.5 million, and I guess the Packers weren't able to match that because he chose the Cardinals, even though the Packers are much more ready to win. So you look at that's kind of indicative of the situation, right? They've got to be really careful about where they're spending that money. They can't be selling it out everywhere because we know that this team is very low on cap space. Currently, we're about 8 million over the cap, which is the reason we couldn't, dish out these big deals to the free agents. We didn't franchise tag Aaron Jones, which would have given him a top running back salary, which is at about, I think it was 8.5 million for this year. So we didn't even do that. We didn't even tag him, so he's going to hit the free agent market. But it's definitely, most years we're in very good cap situations because we never spend big in free agency. We have a very good cap system, a long term, ability to take care of the cap. But I think this year is a little different. We're not going to have any money in free agency, and I think it's going to show. So, yeah.
Well, when you look at the big picture, right? Last year, the front office was getting blasted, right? They took Jordan Love in the first round. They actually traded up for him, and then after that, they came back and they got that running back, AJ Dillon.
Hmm.
So when you stop and you look at the big picture, I mean, when you look at it, it everybody wanted to take it as an insult towards Aaron Rodgers, right? But do you see it more the Packers being proactive? Like for instance, AJ Dillon showed some flashes last year that he could be a starting caliber running back. So do you feel comfortable coming into the season with AJ Dillon? And let's just say some, I mean, God, let's just say nothing happens to A Rod, but if he couldn't suit up, would you feel comfortable rolling with Jordan Love and AJ Dillon and still until Aaron Rodgers is able to come back?
I think I honestly not just because I know the level of play that Aaron Rodgers is at. He's playing at MVP level. He's playing historically amazing football. And to say that Jordan Love without an offseason, right, with the shortened offseason and the whole season, by the way, he was not active for a single game. The Packers had it in their mind. I would not suit up. There's no chance he's going in the game. We're not going to mortgage our future. We're not going to say we're not going to throw him in the fire. But no matter what happens, Jordan Love will not play. We have a plan for this guy. They're not going to they're not going to just throw him in the short and off season. We have time to prepare and do that. So I mean, listen, there's a big drop off between Aaron Rodgers and anybody, but particularly a never even seen the field, not even taking a snap. I think in terms of the running back situation, you addressed it. If Aaron offense is pretty run dependent. Matt LaFleur brings in that zone running scheme. He runs the ball a lot, 25 times a game. You're talking about a bell cow in Aaron Jones. All those touches are going to be gone. AJ Dillon, he showed flashes, and I'm confident that he can have a game partly because of his talent and our offense. But he's just a way different back. Aaron Jones, and what he does, the reason he's so valuable is because you can split him out wide in motion into the receiving sets, and that was really the expansion of his game. In 19, he wasn't flanked out as wide, but I think in 20 they kind of put him out as a receiver, kind of show that dynamic ability out in space more so, and he really grew into the offense. He was able to expand his role. So AJ Dillon doesn't do that. He's not quite as dynamic. He can catch the ball. I think for his size, they like what he can bring, but he's not quite as dynamic as Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones does have great. I mean, there's a couple runs where he'll just go break one for 35, and that's that. And it's a touchdown, and that's it, which is really nice for an offense to kind of take that pressure off. So I mean, I'm confident in Dillon, but he's nowhere. He's not an Aaron Jones, and although he's a better goal line back and a bruiser, he's not as dynamic, and you're not going to be able to do what you can in the receiving game.
No, yeah, I feel what you're saying. It's just different, right? Like you said, he like at the cut of a dime, he can score a touchdown.
Yeah.
But
Inside the five, I'd rather.
no, yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? I mean, at one point, AJ Dillon was considered a top, a top prospect, and it just things happen, just changes happen, and he kind of fell where he fell last year in the draft to the Packers. But looking right now at the current situation, right? Of course, the Green Bay Packers are going to have to be very, very creative in restructuring some deals, right, to open up some of this cap space. As we've seen and we talked about earlier in the week, I think we're talking about, who with the, Buffalo Bills maybe cut some players. And previously we talked about the Chiefs too, because they were also in cap hell. I mean, look at it. I mean, the Chiefs released both their offensive tackles, and it wasn't because of a decline in age. I mean, they're both injured players, but in the process, they did help out their actual, uh, uh, freeing up cap space. And then look at the Buffalo Bills releasing oh gosh, John Brown, Josh
John,
Brown. I'm sorry,
John Brown. John Brown.
John Brown. I had it right the first time. So when you look at it, I mean, the Packers are going to have to be creative with restructuring some of these deals. So with that said, it's easy to say that we're not going to be seeing any flashy free agency moves by the Green Bay Packers. Is that safe to say?
I think it's only in the past 10 years the most money we've ever spent is Darius Smith and Preston Smith, those brothers. This year we're 27th in cap space. So, you kind of take that history of how we operate as a franchise and the cap space situation pretty much realize that there's not going to be huge free agency signings. Our general manager Brian Gutekunst did say there is shining, but that was basically assuming they're not going to get other guys, and they're basically going to sacrifice the roster. Because if you've been a fan of the Packers like I have, for a fact that they'd rather get 3 guys, get depth, and to get role players versus one guy where you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and you're kind of betting on the fact that he's going to at that price tag level. Because here's a great example: Preston Smith, right? He was signed along with Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith was an excellent signing. But Preston Smith, there was a major drop off in his production from 2019 to 2020. 2019, he had sacks. He wasn't quite as good as Zadarius. Zadarius was always getting the pressures, and Preston was always getting the sacks. So it was kind of a misleading stat. But this year, he had a big drop off in production, and all of a sudden, we're paying him top dollar, $11 million for a guy that really has not lived up to that. So I don't know why we're cautious with free agency. I wouldn't expect a big signing at all. I think they didn't go after J.J. Watt, which I think was telling. I think if the Packers matched their offer, he would have came to us, just because he's a Wisconsin kid and a better team than the Cardinals. So better chance to win the Super Bowl.
Like you said, there's no place like home, right?
Yeah.
But so I mean, there's been some changes already as a recent, right? I mean, you guys have released, I believe it was Kirksey.
Kirksey.
And,
yeah.
And who was the expectation also that you were hearing?
Rick Wagner. So he's our right tackle, but there's some speculation that he might retire. So we're gonna wait it out, see what he does. But he is, we would like to get an upgrade on an offensive line. You don't want like a Rick Wagner. He when you're on the other side of David Bakhtiari, you obviously can't be as good, but it's a glaring hole when you got a guy like Rick Wagner on that right side, who is supposed to be just a bridge guy to the next guy. It showed up in the NFC Championship game because Shaq Barrett was lined up over him on that right tackle side. He was just going at him. I think he had a bunch of pressures that game and really kind of disrupted our offense. So I think an upgrade at tackle is definitely going to be necessary. But you see the Packers at the top of the earning class. A guy like Dean Lowry is pretty high up there in salary, but his production does not match it. So those kind of guys will be on the hot seat, and they're going to look to make room to cut guys to make more space.
So when you look at that big picture, right, and then of course you guys also made some changes to your defensive coaching.
Absolutely, yeah. We changed defensive coordinators. So we got Joe Barry in there now. We got rid of Mike Pettin. Mike was in an interesting situation. So he was actually originally a holdover from the Mike McCarthy regime, and then he stayed here when Matt LaFleur came. So they had 2019 and 2020 together, and 19 was a really good year defensively. They were very opportunistic. Slight setback this year, mostly, I would say, because of probably game script. I mean, whenever you're scoring 32 points, the other offense is always going to be more aggressive, which put the defense in a tough situation. But it wasn't Matt LaFleur ultimately. Mike Pettin was not his. He was a Mike McCarthy guy, so he wanted to get his own kind of guy, which he did with Joe Barry from the Rams. So we'll see how that goes.
So I mean, do you think that they're going to continue with the defensive scheme that they have in place?
I mean, well, Pettin it was very unique. There's a lot of moving guys across the formation. You'd see a Zadarius Smith all across the formation, over the center and guard, on the edge. It was very creative. I think it's going to be the reason I think we got Barry because Matt LaFleur is so familiar with him from his time on the Rams coaching staff. So I'm sure there's some common philosophies defensively that they share that kind of entice LaFleur to get Joe Barry as the defensive coordinator. But I just hope, for defense, the main things really are going to come down to when we don't have a solid lead, when we don't have a 10-point, 14-point lead, how will we stop that run? And how are we going to have that number 2 corner slow down the passing game? Because we saw Kevin King, number 2 corner spot, was a bit of a liability at times this year compared to Jair Alexander at that number 1 corner spot. So I think it's going to come down to that number 2 corner spot and the ability to stop the run when you don't have a solid lead.
So let's get into it. I mean, they're picking 29th this year in the draft.
Yep.
So
no, might be 30th.
Well, they're going to be picking very, very
very late.
at that back end of the draft. So
No
let's
doubt.
talk about some prospects there that you think that you feel that would match up well with some of the needs. Now, these needs are not based off anything in particular. This is what we've observed, right? Personally.
Right.
So at the top of the board, I mean, linebackers there. You have corner and of course defensive line. So it looks like all the attention for the first couple of rounds, the first maybe 3-4 rounds, are going to be heavily. Is it safe to say would it be heavily set towards the defense?
I don't think that'll necessarily be the case. I don't think they'll be rigid as to say, let's focus on this side of the ball. But I do think, I mean, I would definitely bet on more defensive picks and offensive picks just based on which side of the ball needs more help. I would say you look at a Christian Barmore, D-line from Alabama, a guy that can they really just need a thumper, a guy that's going to be mean and stop the run. Really in that front seven, you got Kenny else that consistently is a thumper that can just make a difference in the running game, that can really just toughen up and say, no, you're not getting these yards. Kenny got Dean Lowry's not been able to do that. Tyler Lancaster has not been able to do that. The two inside linebackers, Christian Kirksey, he can't do that, and Chris Barnes is a very, very young, undrafted guy. So he's kind of thrown into the fire. I don't think he's quite ready for that starting role. So just getting a thumper is really important. You look at a Greg Newsome, the corner from Northwestern, just getting that number 2 corner spot, being able to get him in the building and just develop him along with Jair Alexander. And there's a bunch of young pieces in that secondary, Darnell Savage, Josh Jackson. So that could be a fit. You look at it. Yeah, what were you going to say?
That name right there, Greg Newsome, man. He ran a 4.3. Can you imagine Darnell Savage, Jair Alexander, and Greg Newsome? I mean, that's speed on defense.
That's speed on defense, and that's an extra tick longer that quarterback can have to hold on to the ball. Hopefully that pass rush can get. But you look at a guy like Xavier Collins.
Man.
Yeah, absolute beast. I mean, this guy's like 6'6". I mean, towers over everybody. And the definition, he had a pick six on a game-winning pick six to close the game against us, and I think triple OT against Tulane. So that was a heartbreaker. But just a beast of a player, a guy that's gonna track down that running game, be able to kind of cover those. Linebacking is not just about stopping the run. You got to be able to, against the running backs and tight ends, you got to put those guys in space, and it can be a big mismatch if you've got a guy coverage at that linebacker spot, especially with these hybrid receiving backs. You have a linebacker that's a mismatch in coverage, he's just going to get burned every time. So I think that athletic linebacker is definitely important in this stage, especially for the Packers roster because we don't have one.
Man, when you look at it, for those that haven't seen Xavier Collins, holy smokes, man! That guy is huge. I mean,
looks like he's in the NBA, literally.
He's huge. I think somebody had him listed at 6'4", but I think he's gonna be around that 6'3".
6'7". He's more than that. He's like.
So yeah, so it's just unique to see somebody that huge be able to do everything like you said. He's a playmaker, man. I mean, not only can he stop the run, but dang, he comes with interceptions. So I think that he just looks like a Green Bay Packer. He looks like he belongs as a Packer Nation. I think that would be a good fit there in the first round. Now we have a question here, Ned Lennon. Nice of you to join us, Ned. How early do they go wide receiver in the draft, Abe, or you think they go for a solid vet? Ooh, it's a great question, man. And I'm pretty sure all Packer fans probably want a wide receiver. They want to just give Aaron Rodgers as many weapons as possible. But you did say during our pre-meeting earlier about a certain player that we've completely forgotten, right?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, I don't think the Packers are going to be too kind of hung up on getting a receiver, just because organizationally that's not how we run. We view that position as much more of a developmental position, much more emphasis on like the later years of the receiver, because really what the Packers want to do is build trust with Rodgers and whoever the receiver is. So they feel like they're not just going to bring in whoever from the draft or free agency. They'd almost rather go with the guy in-house. It's kind of had the time with Rodgers, develop that chemistry. And to me, they're going to they're going to look at those kind of like first class receivers, those kind of top receivers that can really come in and make an impact in the offense. The Packers are kind of going to look at them and say, okay, well, what are they going to give us this year? How much are they going to have to develop? Which kind of undervalues them, because you're not, he's not going to credit that. He's not going to think they're going to come in and make a difference right away necessarily, which is always how it's. I mean, last year we needed receiver help way more than this year, because we didn't, this year we had a very good offense, but in 19 we struggled a lot, and he didn't take anyone in the first round, so he has no problem not kind of surpassing those playmakers in the first round. I don't think we're going to value it, so I would not expect us to take a playmaker like that, a receiver type player in the first round. I think a free agent is probably most likely, just because I think he's more ready to play now. You don't have that the time to get him into the offense and kind of develop that chemistry, that kind of thing. Because ultimately, if you don't have the trust of Aaron Rodgers, if you're a young rookie and you can't figure out the playbook, then you're basically useless. It doesn't matter how talented you are. But they're going to want a vet that can really get on the same level as Rodgers, and not just be as talented, but be as smart. Have the second reaction plays on offense, because it's not just Rodgers. Aaron will get you the ball, but you gotta be smart. You can't have the mental errors. So they're not just going to go for a star that they think is talented or fit, and they're certainly not going to reach for a guy, because they're not going to say, this guy was a great receiver at this school, so he's going to come in and be a great receiver here. They're going to really evaluate it and take a deep look at it.
So he says thoughts on Emmanuel Sanders. Ooh, man, that would be nice right there.
Yeah, I think last offseason there were always also talks about us getting him. He wasn't too productive for the Saints, so I'm really not crazy about him. I also have Devin Funchess coming back, which a lot of people forget. Devin Funchess opted out for the 2020 season. We get him back, who's going to be a big red zone threat. And on our offense, you really don't need a star receiver. You just need a guy that can fill in here and fill in there. Red zone touchdown here, that kind of thing. Just kind of bits and pieces to complement with that running game. We don't need a guy that's necessarily going to get us like 90 yards a game. We have that. We need just like a steady guy. And whatever way we find that, Devin Funchess could kind of make our general manager, Brian Gutekunst, kind of shy away from getting a receiver in other ways.
So let's sum it up. So if they're able to hit, and put together a nice little draft class that gets that defense in the right way, or the right direction, to say the least. I mean, I know it's kind of early. It's really early. But I mean, we're anticipating that the NFL is going to have a full off-season program. I mean, can you give us a prediction if they're able to bank on some key key positions and some starters, and they're actually able to play the game, right? What do
Yeah.
you think? I mean, what do you think is the ceiling for the Green Bay Packers in the 2021 season?
To me, there's absolutely no doubt that our ceiling is winning the Super Bowl. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, we proved this past year we're good enough. We're generally good enough to get there. We were in the NFC Championship game. We lost by 5. We lost to a great team. But I think what you saw is a team like the Bucs, who were hyper aggressive in free agency. They just had a little bit more than we did to kind of get over that. Going into the game, everyone thought we were the better team. We were at Lambeau, had that advantage, but we still lost, which was unfortunate. But I think, we're very close. I mean, we're literally, I think, one maker. If you add one difference maker, maybe, a lot of people like to say, what if they took a first rounder, a position player that's not a quarterback in the draft, help out the 2019 team, maybe they get over that hump. I mean, it's very interesting with the Packers. I mean, we're very close. I think you look at cornerback, I think is going to be the deciding thing, because ultimately, I think when you have a really good offense like we do, you got to stop the pass, and ultimately you can't give up these big explosive plays in the passing game. And there was a big drop off. We had Jair Alexander, who was the #1 graded corner, and then we had Kevin King, who was disappointment, which is really disappointing for a guy like me, a fan like myself. And it's really, I mean, we're very close. I mean, you talk about 1 2-point conversion in the NFC Championship game that gets caught. You know, if Kevin King doesn't give up that touchdown, if he plays a little more sound leverage, then we probably win that game. So we're very close to it. Right tackle, that tackle spot, the right tackle is going to be really important. So cornerback, the offensive tackle spot, and the thumpers on defense, that D line and inside linebacker to stop the run. I think those position groups will literally determine what we do. And I think, listen, we're literally inches away from the Super Bowl. So
Very true. So that there goes. That sums it up for the Green Bay Packers. So if they do, I mean, look at the common denominator: a great quarterback. And you get him a solid defense that can get him the ball back and have that right balance. It equals a Super Bowl championship. So let's see if the Green Bay Packers can hit on those. So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, thank you.